Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Apologize for the backdrop. We will have green screen, everything. We've been moving some stuff around. We'll have our normal setup back here in a little bit. Uh, just want to get into it here really quick. Again, I've been gone for a couple weeks. Some personal stuff, taking care of some things, but we are back. Our current schedule right now is to make everybody happy in the home. 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Monday, and then back to a morning shift starting tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. We cut out a little bit early, more like 5 to 6:50 to be technical, but 5 to 7 a.m. sounds nicer and cleaner. So that'll be Tuesdays through Fridays, but Mondays will be these afternoon shows. But I appreciate anybody out there hanging out with me. It's coming around. If you're listening to this, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, this is HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Let's get started. So the reason why I love this, truly the reason why I love this, is because when I am a sports just fiend, right? There's no other way to put it. Yesterday, and I'm working, by the way. I'm out Ubering. I'm out doing some other stuff, some stuff with the wife. I'm watch three different sporting events back to back to back. I watch a baseball game, Rays Cardinals. Anybody knows me knows how much I love the Rays, the intrigue with the fan base, or with the franchise, everything they got going on to be as successful as they've been, and to still with their lower payroll to be successful there. I think they're one of the most well-run franchises in American sports, and they just don't get talked about enough because they don't have the hardware, and a lot of that, I believe, is limitations of the actual financial situation of the franchise. So I watched that game. Great game. Then I watch Duke UConn, which we're going to talk about here in the second part. Great college basketball game. And I'm somebody who, anybody who knows me, I'm not the biggest college basketball guy. I'm just not. I watch all the big games. I watch March Madness. But if you sit there and say, hey, are you watching 2 to 3 college basketball games a week or over under 2 to 3 college basketball games a week, I'm going to hit the under. I just do not watch college basketball in the same vein that I watch the NBA. And then I ended my night, or at least the sports part of my night, watching Pelicans Rockets. And the Pelicans have no chance to make the playoffs. They got blown out in that game. But I went from baseball, college basketball, and NBA basketball. And I loved every minute of it. And it got me to thinking, how many people in that are currently watching sports just truly love watching sports? How many people are excited when they turn on a game and it's a Tuesday night and there's no your show on whatever app that you follow, whatever series you're watching, whatever documentaries you're watching, none of that's on. And all you got is the chances to watch live sports. I love that stuff. I don't know how much people love sports in 2026. Gambling being such a huge part of sports now, where there's a bunch of people who are more involved in sports, more people who are probably actively watching the sports, but it's not because they love watching a baseball game or they love watching a basketball game. They want the gambling aspect of it. Then there's a bunch of people, because we live in the age of social media and the internet, there's a bunch of people who are just trolls. And all they want to do is sit there and go, I want to laugh at whoever makes a mistake. The younger boozer brother. He has a bad turnover, leads them losing the game, and there's people that just want to sit there and crack jokes on him, make fun of him, do all this stuff. And it's like, you haven't accomplished nearly what he has at his age, and all you want to do is make fun of him and troll. And then there's the worst part of this, which is the analysts who are in that same boat of, I need 3 or 4 highlights that I can do segment A of my show, segment B of my show, or you do A block, B block, and that's it. And even some of the analysts are only watching sparingly, or they're there only to criticize. And so I say all that to say, as we get back into the swing of things here on a Monday, if you're watching this show, if you're listening to me, if you've ever listened to me, I'm not saying I got to be your favorite person. I'm not saying I got to be your most watched. But just know that when you're watching me, when you are listening to me, you are listening to somebody, you are watching somebody who truly loves this sports stuff. Like, I love it, man. I love it. I watched 3 different sporting events, and I loved every minute of it. I don't watch a ton of regular television. So sports have always kind of been my go-to. And they're amazing. They're fun to watch. They're a great time. It was just a great Sunday for sports. And I watched a team that most people would tell you was tanking in the NBA and the Pelicans, even though they're not tanking, they just had a bunch of injuries. I watched Rays Cardinals, neither of which is a premier MLB franchise. It's not the Dodgers, it's not the Yankees. And then obviously the college basketball game that was the biggest of the 3 games that I watched yesterday. Speaking of people that love sports, man, watching Dan Hurley is fun. I'm not the college basketball guy. I'm not someone you should come to for your, if you are really deep in the weeds on college basketball, I should not be your first source of information. But that was a really fun college basketball game. And that was a guy who did everything in his power. You can say what he wants. It's old school. He's over the top when he's screaming at players and getting all dramatic. But the way he presented himself yesterday, that was a joy to watch. Outright, unapologetically, just a joy to watch. A coach who seemed just as invested as his players were. And it felt like he was the energy he had on the sideline that was willing his team back into that game. Yes, I know you can make up everybody starting today with Duke choked, Duke let the game get away. And yeah, that's a valid argument and it's true. But Dan Hurley was willing his guys. Dan Hurley was just the over eccentric, the actions, bumping head with the refs, like everything he was doing. I loved every minute. And again, I'm not a college basketball guy. I watch March Madness and a couple of the really big top 25 games, and that's about all you get out of me. But his ability with his team down as much as they were to will them back into that game, to put them in that position where it was like, oh, they're not only making a comeback, they came all the way back and won. And even when they hit the shot, the clip that's going around today is Dan Hurley bumping into the ref. And everybody's like, yeah, we know it's a technical, but like, it's awesome. Like, it is a fantastic product. It is a fantastic display of a coach. And never forget this. Again, this is not the deepest analysis of the actual game. But I was watching this and it was so much fun. Because athletes make, and the people around athletes, coaches, general managers, I apologize, I'm sweating, the room's not set up yet. The guys around them, again, GMs, like, there's just a lot of money in sports right now, right? Everybody's getting paid, everyone's getting paid millions of dollars. When you are paid that much money, sometimes being relatable is hard. It is. So the easiest way to be relatable is we want to feel like you care. We want to feel like you care as much as us sitting on the couch watching with our kids or watching with our city together, whoever we're watching the game with. We want to feel like you care. We want to feel like the players care. We want to feel like the coaches care. We want to feel like everybody cares. You watched Dan Hurley yesterday? That motherfucker cares. Say what you want. Yeah, it should have been a tech. Duke should have technically gotten a free throw to try to tie the game up. But he was eccentric. That's his personality. He was super eccentric all second half. And that was a coach showing you how much he cares, his players showing you how much they care, and he just willed them back into that game. Like, before I got on, I had this thing of like, I wanted to exemplify the coaching that it takes in UConn to be competitive as they've been, like, between him and Calhoun. Like, because that's not and even Ollie got a national championship, if I'm right. That's not some power school in terms of, it doesn't have the appeal of going to LA or going to New York. Like, it's cold in Connecticut. And for guys who can now make millions of dollars to go play college basketball, that's not exactly the hub. But I said, screw all that. As I was going through today and thinking about the game, like, he was my biggest takeaway. To be that energetic, to be that exuberant, like, that was a coach who felt like he was willing his team personally back into the game. And I loved every minute of it. It was a fantastic experience. A great day of watching sports, man. Oh, man. We're going to take a break here, but so much more to come back on. We have, of course, why would he say that? We got a lot of people through it. We've had 2 weeks to prepare. Mike Trout, maybe back to being Mike Trout. I got hope. Plus a lot more. This is HardFoul Radio, back momentarily. And we are back. Man, it feels good to be back. Appreciate everybody hanging out with me today. And again, if you are listening to this after the fact, appreciate you as well. So, baseball is back, and I've been on this for years, and I'm aware it's only 3 games, and I'm fully aware of how long a baseball season is. But man, it felt good to see Mike Trout back. Mike Trout, forget the stats. Yes, he's reached base 11 times in 3 games, which is a franchise record. Forget the stats. I'm just happy to see Mike Trout is back and looks healthy. Obviously, the home run swings look great. The plays in center field. He's stealing bases. What you never really want to see, unless you're just a hater of a certain player or team, which is valid in a lot of cases. I say all the time, I hate the other 3 AFC West teams. Basketball doesn't really have divisions, but I do dislike Lou Dort tremendously on the Thunder. Like, there's reasons to dislike players in terms of your fandom. But if you just appreciate greatness, and Mike Trout's one of the best we've ever seen do it. He's probably top 5 in my personal life in terms of who I've seen live in real time. I don't think Judge is better than him yet. I would go Trout, Ohtani, and I think for me, it's probably Griffey and Bonds. As far as position players, Miguel Cabrera is probably in there as well somewhere, but like that's probably my top 5 players, right? You never want to see a guy who was an all-time great just go out with nothing. It's just rough, man. Like in the NFL, it's like celebrated Peyton Manning that second Super Bowl because they won the Super Bowl. But Peyton was just a shell of himself. Peyton was benched for Brock Osweiler. He could barely throw the ball downfield. Yes, his mind was still sharp, and there were things he could do at the line of scrimmage that were obviously invaluable and helped Denver win a Super Bowl. But Peyton Manning was a extremely shot fighter by that point in his life, by that point in his career. So it's tough to say, oh yeah, let's celebrate what Peyton Manning did, when it's like, well, Peyton wasn't really Peyton. He was I've said this before, I guess hot take, Peyton Manning might be the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. That 2015 Peyton Manning might be the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. No one's going to say that because it's Peyton Manning. But that just go back and look. I watched all of those games. It was C.J. Anderson, what's left of Peyton Manning's right arm, and thank the Lord he still had Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, who made a lot of plays, especially after the catch, that helped him for the limited he could do. Those might have been the 2 best receivers to have at that point in time, and obviously somebody like excluding like Antonio Brown and the obvious clear-cut guys, but having guys like that who were so great after the run. So I say all that to say is and we saw Miguel Cabrera in baseball. Miguel broke down, and by the end, he was barely a fielding first baseman, didn't hit for really any power, the batting average tanked, but he was Miguel Cabrera, and so they let him, quote-unquote, go out on his own terms. I fear that for another Tiger legend, Justin Verlander. He's there this year. Didn't have a great year in San Francisco. I know his brother will argue that. But let's see what is left. Is Justin Verlander going to go out throwing 91, 92 miles per hour, getting lit up for 4 or 5 runs in 4 or 5 innings? Like, what is the case of Justin Verlander, what he has left? What is it? Because he's got to have something left. You would think, you'd hope. But I want to see Trout, who's one of the greatest players I've ever seen. I'm rambling a little bit here, guys. Apologize. Trout's one of the greatest baseball players I've ever seen in my life. Like, undisputed. I don't want him to go out on such bad terms. I just don't. So, I am excited and I am happy that Trout looks like the old Mike Trout. That Trout looks like a guy. Sorry, I messed my microphone here. That Trout looks like a guy who is back to being one of the best players in baseball, which is what he was for over a decade. Go look at those top 100 player rankings, and Major League Baseball has some actual serious and legitimate ones. Trout was no lower than second for a decade. Like, that's how great he was. He was, people that love WAR, and that stat kind of came to the right. Like, Trout was the first WAR superstar in real time. Obviously, they've gone back and they've, guys back in the a lot of those 20 Yankees, DiMaggio, Babe Ruth, like, they've got crazy wars. Bonds had crazy wars, but like in real time, as WAR was exploding, Trout was the first in real time WAR superstar. And I think his WAR was twice as high as the second place. Like, it was crazy how much more dominant he was than the next best guy. So I've been saying this. I just want to see one more full season of healthy Mike Trout. That's what I want. I want one more healthy season of Mike Trout. Now we're going to do a little bit of a flip on one of my favorite parts of the show, if not my favorite part of the show. Why would he say that? And this is something I actually agree with, but I'm glad somebody else said it in totality. I've kind of hinted at it once before. So Colin Cowherd made a comment today in regards to Josh Allen and the Bills, and he's like, hey, look, now Jason McIntyre's on the show, and Jason McIntyre does a bunch of just saying bullshit and things that I just don't even want to really ever talk about or discuss. He's kind of too low in terms of fodder for things to be discussed during the segment because he's intentionally trying to say dumb stuff to get opinions. But Colin talked about the Bills and their Super Bowl window. And he's like, hey, look, Ben aged fast, Cam aged fast. When guys are that big and they're getting hit a lot because they know that they can take more hits because they're bigger than other guys, yeah, it's great when you're in your mid-20s or late 20s and you can take it because your body recovers faster. But the reality is, the more hits you take, it doesn't matter if you were. Cam Newton is as big and athletic as any quarterback who's ever played the position. Cam broke down because he took too many hits. Because the human body will always break down if it takes too many hits. That's the reality of this. So, and we all love Josh Allen, and he's amazing. He's one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But he's 30 now, or going to be 30 once the season starts. What is the lifeline of this version of Josh Allen? I said a few years ago, kind of in passing, that do the Bills view Josh Allen as a long-term quarterback? Now, he's played much better, and he's obviously earned an MVP, and he's probably solidified himself as a Hall of Famer since I last made this comment. But it was the idea of, would you take the guy with the rocket arm, can run around, but he's a little reckless? Would you take 5 to 6 years? Everything's a little more relative now, so let's say 7, 8 years, which they've gotten, of dominant guy, big arm, runs around, great athlete, versus 15, 16 years of insert like your quarterback. Like, right? Like Dak is probably going to make it to 15 years, and he's stopped running after year 3 or year 4. So he's pretty much just a pocket guy now. Would you want 15 years of Dak Prescott, who is going to get you some high-ranking offenses? He's going to throw the ball over the place. He's going to be super productive. Or would you rather the high-end peak of 7 to 8 years of somebody like Josh Allen, knowing there's no way he's going to make it to 36 to 40 years old? Like, Rodgers is still playing because he doesn't get hit. Manning made it as long as he did because he was avoiding hits. Brady made it as long as he did because he avoided hits. Like, the guys that get hit more, Ben, Josh Allen, Cam, like Ben and Cam, you saw when they broke down. Now, I think Josh is better than both of them, but that doesn't take away from the fact of he's not a Viltrumite. He can't just keep taking hits and recovering to full strength. So I actually want to applaud Colin because I think this is, nobody wants to say it because it's the crappy side of sports and it's the crappy side of professional football, even though that's why we also love it. Getting hit a lot, getting hit constantly, is going to have an impact on your body. And when it does, this is the result. Shorter careers, more injuries, guys not able to recover as fast. Like, Josh is going to be 30. There's a good chance, in my opinion, I just think we see a less aggressive Josh Allen when it comes to running the football. Maybe save that just for playoff time. But then is that the same player? Like, I wonder this a little bit with Lamar too, but where I think is the difference between him and Lamar Jackson is I think Lamar's already started to do this a little bit, which is I think Lamar, who's just has world-class speed. Like, he's faster than Josh. Josh, if you want to, Lamar's the best dual-threat quarterback ever because he just has a different gear that he can hit. Now, Josh is fast and Josh is bigger, which does help him in certain scenarios. But Lamar can almost threaten his speed longer than he has it. Meaning, Josh, it's just going to always kind of be, yeah, we're still going to go after him because we got to hit him, and getting him to the ground is hard. But he's not outrunning corners. Lamar could outrun guys in the secondary. And as long as you can threaten that, that's almost just as valuable as actually being able to do it. And I think Lamar's already hit that part of his career. So when Lamar has these gaudy passing numbers, no, I don't think Lamar is as amazing a passer as some of the guys historically he ranks with. Like, he's the all-time leader in passer rating. I don't think he's a better thrower of the football than an Aaron Rodgers, a Dan Marino, Peyton, Brady. But I think because he has the threat of running, that obviously changes the way you can defend him. And so I think they've already taken some of that into consideration, that if I just run a few times, I can make you believe I still have this game-breaking speed longer than I actually have it. Whereas Josh, he's just kind of this big guy, and it's just, he is who he is. I feel like his style of running is harder to enforce than somebody like Lamar, who is just scaring you with the thought of pure speed. So, but again, it's a tough take because no one wants to talk about the injury side of it, and it would be obviously unequivocally a huge bummer, and it would suck for all the sports fans, especially football fans, if Josh Allen were to be hurt because he got hit, or if he was to just play less, because we need more good and great quarterbacks in the NFL to make it a better product, and Josh is obviously a great quarterback. But the idea that their window is closing because Josh Allen get hurt, I think is absolutely valid. I think it's absolutely valid. And I think it's a tough thing to actually say because, again, no one wants to be the guy that says, oh, well, I'm just going to say this guy's going to get hurt, and that's what's – especially with quarterbacks. We kind of incorporate it like with running backs. We just kind of go, oh, yeah, we know running back, it's a tough position. You get hit, your injuries are going to happen. Obviously, like Bronco fans, we're hoping J.K. Dobbins, like, hey, this is the year he doesn't get hurt because he's great when he's there, but you just kind of factor injuries in. So, again, not a demeaning why would he say that, but I think this actually took some courage to why would he say that, and I think the reason's justified. Why would he say that? Because I think it's the truth. I think Josh Allen, this next season, next 2 seasons, are going to be really indicative of what the rest of his career is going to look like. And I'm interested to see it. Moving on. Again, we got baseball back, man. We got March Madness. It's a wonderful time to be a sports fan. We also got NFL draft stuff, which, again, you guys know my rule on NFL draft. Tony and I will be putting on an episode. We're going over all the prospects. I was more tapped into college football this year than I've been in the past, obviously, but I still leave a lot of like the really big opinions and evaluations to Tony. I do think it's interesting. So here's my thing with Fernando Mendoza. I think it's tough. Now, I think most of these guys have said this before because Chris Carter is the guy who said this years ago, and I always give him credit whenever I say this because it's not my source material. 99% of guys are system players. He says even Hall of Famers are system players. Guys get in the right organization, the right system, the right structure. That's how they actually unlock. You can have really talented guys who can really play this game. They end up in a crappy organization. It's all over. So Fernando Mendoza could be great. And I know Dan Orlovsky right now, I always struggle saying his name. Dan Orlovsky, he is promoting Ty Simpson as number 1 quarterback right now. That's been his thing the last couple of weeks. And again, I really wouldn't nail him or slam him for the opinion because I'm just not the guy to really give you deep college breakdowns, nor deep film breakdowns. But that might be changing. Watch out. What I do want to look at and consider, because I'm going off of what experts are saying, I'm going off of people that are supposed to be really knowledgeable about it, is that when you look at top prospect lists, like the guys who are the top prospects, and normally a lot of years, the quarterback's not the number 1 prospect. Everybody understands positional need and value, and that obviously overweighs a lot, and that's why they're number 1 overall picks. But there's been a lot of years where guys, it's like, oh, well, the best pass rusher in this draft is actually the best prospect. I think Kyle Pitts, the year he came out, he was actually considered the best prospect. Like, that's not an insane thing. But when you're not one of the 4 or 5 best prospects as a quarterback, it's a little worrisome. It's like, okay, well, how low down the list are we? Because that's basically what you're compensating for, positional value. If you are the 7th best player, but you play the most important position, I'm saying positional value is worth 6 spots. And a lot of times it probably is for quarterback. Now, are you the 15th or 16th best player, but I'm still going to draft you number 1 overall because of positional value? Well, now that makes me a little more nervous. And I'm not saying Mendoza's the 15th or 16th. Just hear what I'm trying to paint the picture. If you then take that with this quarterback class 2 years ago, the Caleb, Drake, Jaden, Bo Nix, 6 guys were drafted. 4 of them work. Undisputedly, they just work. Jaden, Caleb, Bo, Drake, May, they work. Penix has some injury concerns, but people still believe in the talent. J.J. McCarthy, he spent most of this season being the meme for playing quarterback the worst you possibly could. But Minnesota still has some hope, even though they just brought in Kyler Murray. That class, because there's 6 of them and 4 definitively work, 2 were iffy about, it's where would you fall in line in that draft is what a lot of guys are going to compare to. If you came out that year, how highly would you be touted? And for the most part, Caleb was an all-time prospect coming out, so most people would have everybody below Caleb. And a lot of people now, a little bit of revisionist, but some real tools. Drake May, if you're saying, well, he's the 2nd still, that's not a bad dig, right? Like even last year with Cam Ward and Shador, I think got drafted way lower than he was supposed to. But Cam, who was number 1 overall pick last year, they're like, well, yeah, he would have been probably quarterback 3, maybe quarterback 4, depending on how you felt about Jaden Daniels. That being said, when I see a lot of people with Fernando Mendoza, they're like, well, he's clearly below Caleb, Jaden, and Drake as prospects. And he's really just, people say, well, he's better than Bo. Some of that is age. Okay, now I'm really worried because now I'm overcompensating a lot for positional value because you might really be player number 9, 10, 11. And in this class of 6 quarterbacks, well, you clearly wouldn't have been the top 3. And I now have to go to the Raiders, who I know they have Tom Brady, and that means something, I'm sure, but I've yet to see it actually pay dividends. So are the Raiders a competent franchise? I like some of the free agent moves as well. And I'm not even trying to be a hater. I hate all 3 AFC West teams, but I'm not trying to be a hater in this scenario. Are they actually a competent franchise? Is Kubiak going to be a good head coach? Do they have the stability and structure to help overcome these other things that not just Mendoza, but all rookie quarterbacks need to be successful? You're also, by the way, going into maybe the toughest division in football. Like, there's a lot here that I would be concerned if I'm a Raiders fan. I'm not saying that it can't work, and I know you probably don't give a shit what a Bronco fan thinks, but there's a lot of, ooh, this could be bad. Ooh, this could be rough. There's a lot of that exists right now. Division, actual stability of the franchise, how much you're overcompensating for positional value, where would he rank amongst other heavy quarterback classes? I wish Fernando Mendoza, and I truly mean this, Raiders fans, I wish him nothing but the best because the league is better with more good and more great quarterbacks, and I hope you guys get one. But there's a lot to also be worried about. This is HardFoul Radio. Back momentarily. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody hanging out with me today. We are back for our first time in 2 weeks. Again, I've had some personal stuff going on, which is why I haven't been here. But we got a lot of stuff coming out. Don't forget, you can also check out episodes of the Group Chat Podcast and A&M. All three sponsored by W. Appreciate W for the sponsorship. Appreciate my guys for putting together great shows week in, week out. There is no A&M this week where I'm dropping a really large episode tomorrow. Matt is going on a well-deserved vacation with his wife, so shout out to them. Group chat will be back on Wednesday. It's a lot of really fun stuff, man. There's, again, I called this episode Why I Love Sports, and it's also just kind of a why I love doing this and why I will always love doing this. I just don't... Who said the quote? I just watched the video on it, or a clip on it, and it was like, don't try to overthink happy. If you're happy, be happy. And the quote was in reference to, it was like a kid who was playing in the mud, but the kid was having the time of his life. And the parent was like, oh my gosh, why are they in the mud? They're going to be dirty. Start freaking out, all this other stuff. And, you know, they just turned it into this horrible experience because they start yelling at the child, like, oh, you should be playing in the mud, blah, blah, blah. Like, now they're upset, car's dirty, everything's gone wrong. And the advice this person gave them was basically like, well, what if you just let them play in the mud? They were happy. They were having a good time. Like, yeah, you were going to have to, clean up because they were already dirty. It wasn't like you're going to be able to undirty them so your car wasn't going to get dirty, but you can clean a car. Your child was having fun. Don't try to overthink happy. And so many of us, and I get it, there's bills, there's other stuff in life. And this is not the motivational speaker podcast, I promise. But when I figured this out, despite what's relatively like my lack of success doing it, I just love it. And I do this every couple of months where I do sit there and evaluate my life, and I'm like, okay, can I keep doing this? Can I keep, putting X amount of time? Like, I've got other stuff I do have to do. I put the video out 2 weeks ago, and that kind of led to the break of how long can I continue to talk to myself? How long can I continue to put out content that's not generating money? How long can I continue to invest in something that doesn't have a return? It has no ROI. And I never know what the answer is to that. But I know I love it. And I know just the happiness that it brings me. Sometimes that's worth it. And so I will continue to sit in this room and talk to myself and hope that a couple people think that it's either interesting, sounds good, is funny, and that you guys enjoy it. Because I enjoy doing it. And I just want it to be something that people can also enjoy listening to and hopefully make a couple bucks along the way. I also don't understand how people don't love baseball. Like, genuinely don't love baseball. Like, here's the thing. And I have a couple of friends who are casual baseball fans, and we'll go to a couple of live baseball games a year. And live baseball is fantastic. This is too... Baseball's fantastic, and I don't want to get on another like soapy rant of like, why don't you love this? Let me put it this way better. Rob Manfred, I apologize. I was one of the people who were really critical of Rob Manfred. I thought he was doing a horrible job. I did not like him as a commissioner. There was a bunch of things I thought he was just objectively doing wrong. No other way to put it. Just I thought he was objectively doing wrong. But he got it with the pitch clock. Games are faster. People are more engaged. Innings are quicker. He got it with the bullpen guys. You can't switch out every single batter. Takes too long. We got to get people engaged. We got to get action. And now with ABS, he might be swinging 3 for 3. ABS has been great in this first weekend. Funny enough, we got one last controversial call in the World Baseball Classic on the way out of just umpires. But the reviews are quick, the game isn't slowing down, and we are getting accuracy, which the only reason people don't like replay, truly, It's not because of the accuracy, it's because of the time. No one wants to sit there, and I get it, I don't either, and go backwards all the damn time and stop all the damn time. No one wants to go, oh, this one play in a basketball game or a football game or a baseball, like it's like, oh, let's stop all the momentum, let's stop all the progress, and let's just watch this thing. And it's like, I know we can be better about this. Like I know we can. Like they got to be better than this. Tennis is great. Tennis has really quick replay, and it's efficient, it's fast, and it keeps the game moving. Baseball so far has now sped itself up in replay, sped itself up in pitching, and has sped itself up in hitting. And the game's never been in a better place. And Rob Manfred, I owe you an apology. I thought you were going to be the death of baseball. You have helped light and relight this new little mini renaissance that baseball is having. So I can admit when I'm wrong. This could have been hard right or hard left. Apologize, but I had a better one for hard left. But Rob Manfred, my bad, bro. I was wrong. You have your job for a reason, I guess. It's been a fantastic opening weekend. You get a little bit of dominance from the teams that thought were going to be dominant. We got some Mike Trout. We got Aaron. Like it's been a great start to baseball. I love watching baseball. I got games going on all the time. I got my league pass, so I got baseball games going on in the background. It's just great sport. Rob Manfred, congrats. You are back to being a reputable commissioner. And again, you 3 for 3. And I got to give you credit where credit is due. It's a little mini hard left. I was wrong. Sometimes that happens. Not often, but sometimes. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back at the top of the hour. Go get yourself something to drink. Go get yourself something to eat real quick. We'll be back at 5 p.m. And we are back. It is hour 2 of HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. And since it is a Monday, hour 2, 5 p.m., you know what that means we got to do. Hard right, hard left, what we got the most right and what we got the most wrong. And I feel I do this every now and again, especially when I take some time off, which has had to happen because of personal reasons. Let's talk NBA hard right, hard left, holistically on the season. And hard right is something that you can't fix tanking. Teams that are going to want to be bad are going to want to be bad because it's the only way you can get truly elite talent without mortgaging your franchise. And the teams that have issue with it right now, like the Thunder saying they had an issue with teams tanking because they had their picks, is just a joke because the Thunder were literally tanked to get Chet. The reality is, like, the NBA proposed 3 new anti-tanking policies. And that's fine. I think you should want that or have that in case of, like, hey, look, man, we don't want it to look this bad as a product. We don't want the tanking to look this flagrantly obvious, and there's value in that, and that's true. But the reality is you're not going to fix this. And the more and more ideas that come out about how to fix tanking, you realize just how bad and how much we've lost the plot. Here's the thing. Like, Jason Timpf, who does a good, very, very good basketball podcast, he's a part of the Herd, or not, sorry, not part of, he's part of the Volume. I'm getting Colin stuff mixed up. He's part of the Volume, does a really good basketball podcast. We have gotten into the point of, and I know how content creation works, we got to say stuff, you got to talk about stuff, but this was a kind of a new low. This could have also been, why would he say that? And I'm not trying to, I like Jason, I like his show a lot. I'm not trying to be critical here. I just want the point to be understood. He said 2 schedules. You get the schedule at the first up until All-Star break, and that, everybody plays each other X amount of times. He's like, you obviously would change the amount of times because instead of 82 games, which allows you to play your division 4 times, I think he said it gets down to 3 if you go down to 58 games or around that time. So he's like, around that amount of games. So he's like, that would change a little bit. But you have a set schedule, and they play each other for that first pretty much 50 games. And those last 30 games, you separate the teams. You have the top 20 teams only, and they only play each other, and you got the bottom 10 teams, and they only play each other. He's like, and that'll create a good TV product. He's like, that'll create better competition. Because he's a Lakers fan. He's like, I'm actually concerned them playing a lot of these tanking teams to close out the season. Their record might be better, but their performance might be worse because they're going to get away with a lot of bad habits and a lot of bad practices because they're playing competition teams who are trying to lose. And I think that's actually a really valid point. But the idea of taking professionals and going, okay, you guys weren't very good. Now we're going to move you and you're going to play in basically the JV league the second half of the season. This isn't going to happen, man. And this is the part that I know I'm right about, and nobody really wants to talk about it. And I root for a team that people have basically just put into this conversation, even though I firmly will argue and push back. The New Orleans Pelicans did not tank. The New Orleans Pelicans had a lot of really bad injury luck. I think, unfortunately, because of the way their best player plays, have had some really unfortunate foul luck as well. And fouls are not just how many free throw attempts you get, but just the style of the game and the pace of the game. It's been an unfortunate season, but I don't believe they're one of the tanking teams. They've just been bad and horrible at certain parts of the season and had some unfortunate luck. That being said, I can say this with great confidence. This is why it works itself out. Because to say you want to, let's look at the 2 things, right? Let's look at the TV product first. Oh, well, it's not a good TV product to have teams tanking. You're right. And the NBA and media markets and companies already take care of that because they don't put these really bad tanking teams on national and big and primetime games. They stay on their own media network, their own local sports network, and that'll never change because that'll always exist because it's supposed to for people that live there. They're always supposed to have access to their team. but they're not. You don't see the Pelicans on NBC. You're not seeing them on Peacock. You're not seeing them on these ESPN games. Like they just, I watch them. I have League Pass with the Pelicans as my team. Not a lot of other people do. So the TV product is not that important because they just are not on TV, except to people that really, really, really want to go watch them. And you got to be really messed up in the head to really want to go watch them. Guess what? I messed up in the head. I acknowledge that. It's no different than what do you see in the playoffs? Everybody gets game one on a big network, whether it's ESPN, Peacock, like ABC. Like you're going to get your game one on this big network. It's TNT. We're all going to see you. And then those game threes come around, and you see who's down 2-0 and really struggling. Well, that's who gets NBA TV. You know why? Because that's not a great product. Unless you have some super omega star, like if you're down 2-0 to LeBron James, fine. People might see you get your teeth kicked in game 3 on ESPN or ABC. You're down 3-0 and you're against the Warriors, yeah, we'll see you on ESPN, ABC. The Warriors, obviously not this year's Warriors, but the Warriors that were a dynasty. You down 3-0, and even to a team like Giannis has had a bunch of games where they've thrown the Bucks on NBA TV because the team they're playing wasn't very interesting and Giannis wasn't a big enough draw, and they knew the TV product was going to be poor, so they said, let's put it in the smallest, least viewed portion of television and or the internet that we can find. So that works itself out. The TV product is not a real complaint or issue or real concern of the leagues for these bad teams. It's just not. And then let's go with the morality of the game. I would love to sit there and say, yes, you should compete every single time you're on the court. You should, be this, that, or the third. Like there's all these things you should do as a professional. Always try, always care. If you're a basketball player on the Washington Wizards, what are you playing for, man? If you're a basketball player on the New Orleans Pelicans, I saw they'd been playing tough when the play-in was a brief possibility. Once the play-in was no longer possible, I saw the game against Toronto on Friday night. They were only so engaged. I've watched the last couple of games. They're only so engaged. And that's all you can really expect from them. They're making 20. Some of these guys are making 20, 30, 40 million dollars a year. They're not going to be in the playoffs. They're just kind of waiting the same way you would at work. When's my vacation? So yeah, it'd be nice if the morality, but here's the thing, man. There's no real morality clause in sports. You might want one because that makes you feel better. But no real morality. These guys are all professionals. They're all paid. And because of that, they are going to protect their own interest because these guys are all worth individually millions and millions of dollars. And so they're not going to risk or do something to risk that money or to hurt the chance of earning more money just because you want to see them, quote unquote, play hard another night. You can't fix tanking in any sport. And if we're being honest, we only really care in the NBA. No one is making articles and putting out all this news and putting out YouTube videos about why are the Miami Dolphins tanking, even though they are. But we just go, it's the NFL. We don't feel like teams tank the same way because it's a physical sport and so it's harder to tank. But you're going to see guys on the Dolphins when they're 3-12. They just might not make that tackle on a late season Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey or like just any running back for that matter. Guys are going to make business decisions. But we only really emphasize it when it's the NBA. Little odd, no? And let's go with my hard left. And this one's kind of unfortunate. We're going to revisit this topic at the end of the show. I was wrong about how the refs were going to react to the Thunder and Lou Dort. I thought when Lou Dort clearly and maliciously went after Jokic, I thought there was going to be a real change in how they were potentially reffed. That I've been saying this for a couple years. Again, nobody watches the Pelicans, I understand. when the Pelicans and Thunder played in the first round a couple years ago, Lou Dort was doing all kinds of crazy defense to Brandon Ingram. He was grabbing him, he was holding him, he was doing whatever he was playing. That was really where the football player Lou Dort was born in that series. I remember even Jeff Van Gundy, they were still on, they had one game on ESPN, and he was like, just third quarter, he's like, man, they're really letting him play with a lot of contact on Ingram. And I was like, yes. And nobody was doing anything about it. This is my lead for tomorrow's show, so I don't want to totally give this away. But this is the problem with, I thought once he went after Jokic, who's one of the 5 biggest names in basketball right now, who's at that point in time I would have still said is the best player in the league, definitively. I no longer think it's definitive. He's got an argument he's the best player in the league still, but I don't think it's definitive anymore. That they would change the way, it was a primetime game, national TV, the best player in the world. I was like, oh, they're clearly going to have to change the way that OKC interacts with the whistle and refs. And the reality is they haven't. They're still get certain calls. They still are allowed to basically foul bait. They still, and OKC fans, don't hit me with the numbers. Oh, well, they only take this many free throw attempts. We all know what we see when Shea throws his body in a weird direction, or Lou Dort is tripping people, or being extra aggressive, or they're being handsy, or they're just fouling you, but we call it great defense. And OKC is a great team. They'd be my pick to win the finals again this year. I don't think they need to be allowed to play this way. But the reality is that why it feels like it's allowed is because it is. Because if the refs had a more definitive whistle, OKC would have to change the way that they're played. And I thought this was going to be the game that, oh yeah, we're now going to change how OKC has to play basketball. And they haven't. Which again, this is part of why it's my lead for tomorrow's show, is I think I have the answer to how to deal with OKC when they play this way. But the reality is OKC has continued to play this way despite what in Dort's situation, I think they play really tough physical defense, and they basically dare the refs to say, hey, are you going to blow a whistle every single play? I forget who made the comparison, but someone made the comparison. It was very Seahawks Legion of Boom, where they were obviously handsy and grabby, but they were basically, they were testing the refs. Are you going to call holding, pass interference every single play? And the reality is the refs didn't. So it's like, yeah, did Sherm get away with stuff? Sure. But they instilled a physical style of football that they're like, they're going to force the refs, hey, will you call this? And then they adapted. The Thunder, I thought, were going to have to be forced to adapt, and they just hasn't. They just continue to do the same thing. And so I believe I have the solution to that, the solution, quote unquote. But that's to lead off tomorrow's show. But I did think there was going to be a real change in how the Thunder played, and I was just wrong. They are continuing to do what they've always done. So, who knows? Maybe next year we'll get fair foul calling and defense. It's tough, man. It's a tough TV watch. You want to talk about for TV appearance? The Thunder are a tough watch. Thunder Pistons, if they both make the finals, if Cade comes back, that's going to be a really tough watch. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. Yeah, we are back. This is Hard for Radio. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with me today. So a couple of stories here I'm going to get into before we close out. So one of them is AJ Brown, and I'm not. I think initially when I've tried to analyze this story the best that I can, I'm always a little confused, and I'm confused because originally I did kind of buy into the whole, oh, well, they got to get rid of AJ Brown because he clearly doesn't fit with the team. They would be better off if they had somebody else. Like, it just felt like it was time to separate. Then the more I've thought about this and more people are like, wow, why AJ Brown's trade price is going up and up and up. I don't really think it is. So let me rephrase this. There's two reasons why I think AJ Brown's not going to get traded anymore. A, I think his hypothetical trade price is just too high. I don't think anybody is going to send over Jalen Waddle went for a first, a fourth, and a third. Well, really a fourth swap. So let's say a first and a third. AJ's clearly a different tier of receiver, even though Jalen Waddle is really good. I don't think anyone's paying a first and a second for AJ Brown and having to pay a large amount of that contract, if not all of that contract. It's not to say AJ Brown's not great. It's not to say he's not one of the 5 or 6 best receivers in football. But just no one's going to pay that for a now aging wide receiver who is perceived to have issues in the locker room. Also, if you're the Eagles, I think this is the bigger deal, or the bigger reason. At this point, why trade AJ Brown? If you're the Eagles, you have at least one more year, 2 max, depending on what you do with the salary cap and contracts and moving stuff around, of having this elite of a roster. I think the 3 best teams in football this year are the Seahawks, Rams, and my Broncos. But if we're just going off rosters, because I think there's other things that play with those, the Eagles have an argument. They're still the first or second best roster in the sport. Like, think about it. They were the best roster 2 years ago. It was them, and I think most people would have said the Lions. I think the Lions we don't view the same way. But the Eagles have just as much talent. Again, eventually they have to pay a really, really big bill, and you can't pay everybody. They just got Jordan Davis signed. Obviously, we'll see what they do with Carter, who's obviously going to want a big contract, deserves a big contract. It's like this team will have to split apart. But as it's currently constructed, this is still one of the 3, 4 most talented teams in football. And if I have that, and I believe I've got the right quarterback who's won a Super Bowl already, Jalen Hurts, been to 2. If I believe, I'm not saying I do personally, but if I'm the Eagles organization and I believe Sirianni is the guy, I've got the head coach, I've got the quarterback, I have an elite amount of talent. Why would I get rid of A.J. Brown? Why would I not do everything in my power to say, hey, look, I'm going to have the top 2 or 3 wide receiver room. I'm going to have a top 2 defensive line room. I'm going to have a great linebacker room still with Bond. I'm going to have a great secondary room with DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. I've still got a really, really good offensive line. Now, the offensive line, I think all they need to do really is just figure out, is Lane Johnson going to retire? And you want to kind of figure that out before the draft and figure out if you need to draft another offensive lineman. But still, if you do that and you get another offensive lineman in there, like, it's the Eagles are still really, really, really freaking good, man. And so I don't think, well, everybody else is like, you got to trade AJ, you got to trade AJ, you got to trade AJ. I think I've just heard so much you got to trade AJ that now I'm like, but why would I trade AJ? Why would I give up any part of my super elite high-end talent if I still feel like for another year or 2, I'm one of the best teams in football just off pure talent and roster construction? Why would I give up? Why would I give up anybody? Why would I give up Carter? Why would I give up Davis? Why would I give up any of these players? And that's where I think the Philadelphia Eagles are. And that's why I think as today, March 30th, I'm not trading A.J. Brown from the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm never going to get what I feel like is actual fair value for him. Teams aren't going to send me a first and a second. And he's still extremely productive. He is still a super threat on the football field. Not trading him. I hinted this a little bit in hard left when I was talking about, or hard right when I was talking about tanking. People only care about tanking in the NFL and the NBA. I'm sorry. Major League Baseball teams tank. There's Major League Baseball teams who do not, for all of the salary cap arguments people want for the Dodgers, of like, oh, you got to put a salary cap because there's buying everybody. There's a lot more teams at the bottom end of baseball who have really cheap ownership and don't want to spend the money, that they wouldn't even qualify if they had a salary cap. Because remember, if you have a salary cap, everybody always looks at it as what's the most amount of money you can spend. But you are required to spend a certain amount, a certain percentage of the salary cap as well. I don't have all those numbers per each sport, but it's somewhere around like 90+%. Like you got to be, if the salary cap is, I'm just throwing out even numbers here to make it simple. If the salary cap is $200 million for a sport, right? You'd have to spend on your team $190 million. I'm sorry, that's a lie. If it was 90%, $180 million. Right? So you could have some wiggle room, but you would be required to spend whatever the salary cap is, a percentage of it. And there's a lot of baseball teams, the Pirates, the A's are weird because they're in transition. We'll see if they become slightly bigger spenders and they get a new stadium and a new city. Apologies. The Rays historically have had really cheap ownership, even though they got bought out by a new owner. So we'll see what that looks like. But a lot of these teams, when it comes to salary cap, they just would not create the bottom end of the threshold, right? And so when you're looking at a team like, who's a good example here? I want to make sure I say this correctly. Because we're starting with, man, I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. I really just lost my train of thought. That's embarrassing. Anyway, but we only, the tanking in only basketball. So, like, there's teams that tank in baseball, and nobody cares. Again, and tanking is not a TV product thing. Because you're just not on major networks, or you're getting big primetime games. You're not going to get NBC. You're not going to get Sunday Night Baseball, Sunday Night Basketball, like all this stuff that's going on. You're just not going to get those, right? And then in the NFL, I brought this up during Hard Right. Why isn't everybody outraged about what the Miami Dolphins are doing? They cut Tua, took the biggest dead cap hit in NFL history, taking over Russell Wilson's, cementing his mark. Then sign Malik Willis, and it's like, oh, okay, they're going to try to, Malik Willis is one of the big names out there as far as potential. Could he be the next transition guy who turns himself into a legitimate starting quarterback? To now, let me do the math. We have Malik, but we released Tyreek, and we traded Jalen Waddle, and we're not signing guys in free agency. Why aren't what the Dolphins doing considered tanking? Oh, because in the NFL, we're like, oh, well, it's not the same, and, it's just for a few years, and they'll be back. Says who? You know how many teams that go bad and go south, and they don't recover for long stretches of time? I rooted for one. The Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015. 2016, it started to go downhill, and they weren't good again until 2 years ago. With almost a whole decade of crappy football. And I don't think Denver was tanking, quote unquote, during that stretch. But Denver was actively every single year. They were weirdly signing new quarterbacks, and it was like, okay, well, maybe Case Keenum will work, maybe Joe Flacco will work, maybe. And I know that sounds, in hindsight, it's like, oh, that's crazy. Of course those guys aren't going to work. But it were legitimate attempts at trying to stabilize the quarterback room, which was the clear problem at Denver for over a decade. The Dolphins Yes, Malik Willis is a attempt to stabilize your quarterback room, but then trading away any potential pass catcher, anyone who could be potentially productive, especially if they trade HN. Why is this not a full on tank? Let's get the number one overall pick. Let's go get Arch Manning. Is that not tanking? We only care about it for some reason when it's in the NBA because what? Why do we care so much more about tanking in the NBA than we do any other sport? Make it make sense to me. Make it make sense. Also, one more thing here before we go to our final break, before we close out the show. The NFL is now testing out how much power they have, and the answer is it's a lot. Preseason games are now going to be behind potentially another streaming software to make it, even more expensive to watch football. And the NFL's like, well, we're the biggest sport in the world. People are going to come watch us. We got this, right? Like, we know people are going to watch no matter what. We know we have the eyes. We know we have the cachet to pull it off. It's just what they're going to do, right? At some point, and I think this is the only way I think this is the long term how the NFL is going to go. The NFL is currently on a trajectory unlike any sport in the history of ever, in terms of its popularity, its revenue, what it's doing. Again, the commissioner come out and said we're competing with Apple and Google. You know how crazy that is? But he's not wrong, because it's so much bigger than the NBA. It's so much bigger than Major League Baseball. That, yeah, you're too, competition. It's not other sports leagues. It's other multi-billion-dollar corporations. But what happens in a lot of these instances, and I'm curious if this is going to happen to the NFL, this isn't really a take, it's more of an observation. When do you get too big and you eat yourself? When do you get to a point where, hey, we are going to keep doing more and more things. We're going to keep going international. We're going to get behind more streaming apps. We're going to get behind more paywalls. We're going to make this even more exclusive. And if people finally go, oh, I don't want to spend however X amount of hundreds of dollars to watch this game or to watch this product, whatever it is on TV. When do you get so big that people are like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need this anymore. I don't want to watch this. I don't need to pay for this. I don't need this. And that's where I think the NFL is heading, semi-unfortunately. I don't even know what's unfortunate. Unfortunate is probably just for me because, again, I love this shit too much. And I love it in what's probably definitively an unhealthy way. But I think that's where we got to start, right? Like, how big can the NFL get before it eats itself, because it puts itself behind too many paywalls. It puts itself behind it just makes itself too expensive to watch for the average person. Who knows? Maybe never happens. This is HardFoul Radio, back momentarily. And we are back. This is Hard Foul Radio. We are back. Oh, that's from outside. I apologize. Hearing some outside noise. Um, we are back to close it out. And what I want to do every now and again, I just get a couple of these big ideas. I don't think work for daily sports, but they work definitely for big picture thought process. And something that's happened in the last 10 years of the NBA has been the quote unquote rise of the perceived foul baiter. And I don't really want to argue with people on if you feel like somebody's play style is more foul baiting than others. Obviously, there's guys like James Harden's been accused of this. SGA currently has been accused of this. Like, there's guys who just get to the free throw line. Got a free throw line a lot, and people decide if they think it's ethical or not. That's been a really big hot word in NBA circles. Is this ethical? I'm not sure if ethical is the right word, nor do I think fans really should be trying to decide if something is ethical or not. But I do think I've figured out in my brain why there's such a, these last 10 years specifically, why there is such a big pushback on the quote unquote foul baiter or ethical basketball player. And I think you got to really go back to, let's take three superstars in general who I feel like have defined a lot of the last 20 years. So let's go and start with Steph Curry. The way Steph plays, Steph has never gotten a lot of fouls because Steph plays beyond the three-point line. He's almost never inside the paint as far as when he's at his most lethal. And so because of that, he's not going to rack up a bunch of shots. And the way those Warriors team played, they just shot the shit out of the ball in a way we've never seen anybody else come close to, that when you were losing to them, it just felt like, man, they're just better than us. Like Durant's shot making, Curry's shot making, Thompson's shot making was just better than anybody ever historically, right? And so you didn't feel like, oh man, we're getting screwed by the refs, or oh, if this had happened, they were just beating you up, right? That then in turn, when you see someone like Harden, who, yes, he was shooting a lot of threes, but you see Harden being creative with his dribble, trying to force contact, trying to draw contact, getting to the line, and maybe being a little extra when it comes to some of the contact he received, how much it actually pushed him back or not, or the reaction that he had. And you can sit there and think, okay, was that legitimate or was it not? And next to Steph Curry, it feels like, Steph doesn't have to do that. Well, because Steph's the greatest shooter ever. Durant doesn't have to do that because Durant is probably one of the 5 or 6 greatest shooters ever, and he's also 7 feet tall. Klay doesn't have to do that. Klay's also one of the best shooters. Like, these guys who are legendary all-time shooters and offensive players, and Harden is that statistically, but only people consider Harden in the same class of shooting as Steph and Klay. He's got to be a little more creative. He's got to do other things with the basketball, right? The next superstar who obviously has defined a lot of the last 20 years is, let's go to LeBron. And really, I want to combine LeBron and Shaq because they both, to me, suffer from the same thing. We are used to historically great NBA players. Everybody says superstars get all the calls. The reality is a lot of superstars probably don't get enough calls because they're usually so great that all you can do is foul them, and refs aren't going to call every foul. Especially guys like LeBron and Shaq, where it's really prevalent because they're just so much stronger than everybody. LeBron, early in his career, was probably fouled twice as much as he's been this last half of his career. But because he was so strong, he was so fast, he could get fouled, and he wouldn't react. He would just go through, absorb the contact, boom, layup, dunk, whatever he was going to do. He was just bigger, stronger, faster. You couldn't, even if you fouled him, you didn't really impede him. Shaq is the ultimate in this, where Shaq, we all knew he was getting hit like crazy every single play. And the refs weren't going to call everything because, A, Shaq was getting fouled and still dunking on people. Shaq was getting fouled and still running people over. Like, it didn't actually impede his progress. And so we are, because of these three specifically, of these two guys who are otherworldly strong and freakish athletes, and Steph, who doesn't play a game where he's around the rim a ton and he's just shooting the ball like crazy, we're not used to seeing these guys who, quote unquote, are foul baiters or manipulating the refs. But the reality is, guys like SGA, who are obviously, these guys are all great athletes compared to a regular person. But SGA is not LeBron. He's not Shaq. He's not some overwhelming athlete where it's like, oh, I can just get by you whenever I want and I can be demonstrative. I can just beat you off pure athleticism. James Harden the same way. Again, really good athlete compared to regular people, but he's not just beating you off athleticism. They need these other things to help compensate for it. That's just the reality of it. Steph wasn't a great athlete, but he's the greatest shooter ever. That was his compensation. He's like, I'm just going to shoot the ball so well that it doesn't matter if I can get to the rim consistently, or it doesn't matter if I can be the best athlete on the court. I am just going to shoot the ball so well, you're all going to have to deal with me for the next decade. And he did that. And so because we're used to that, I always say our superstars set the trends for what we believe is quote unquote pure, ethical, cool, the right way to do things. And because we've seen the Jordan rules. When Mike was getting fouled like crazy, they weren't calling everything. The Pistons, and Isaiah specifically talked about, we did it to kind of force their hand. Kareem was getting fouled. They didn't call every foul. So we're so used to the superstars of old who weren't getting all of these calls, that weren't playing that style because they didn't have to. Shaq could just drop step his elbow and you were on the floor and he dunked the basketball. LeBron could just run by you being so damn strong. There's nothing you could do to him. These guys aren't LeBron's height, weight, and speed. They're not Shaq's overwhelming strength and dominance. They can't shoot the ball like Steph. So they got to do these other things. And that's because those are our most recent superstars that impacts the way we view these. If Dwayne Wade, and I love D Wade, man. I do. I get in. I don't really go and argue with people on Twitter like that, but I get in imaginary arguments on Twitter all the time. People disrespect D Wade, and there's this Harden D Wade conversation that I've just never been willing to budge on. I think Wade is clearly the better player than Harden, and no one can convince me otherwise. If D Wade was the best player in the world during his peak, we would be more accepting of guys like SGA and Harden. And D Wade wasn't, I'm not going to say he was flopping around or exaggerating everything, but there was some exaggeration and he was driving to the paint every single possession and he was getting foul calls. Because D Wade, who was a great athlete, he was about 6'3", 6'4", 200 pounds. He wasn't Shaq, LeBron. He doesn't shoot like Steph. He would drive to the lane, get fouled, draw contact, try to finish. Like, that's just the reality of the way he played. And if he was the guy, we would view guys like Harden and SGA differently, which is why younger kids who never saw Shaq in his prime, they just know him as the guy on TNT, now ESPN, who aren't ever going to, the people and kids who would have never seen early LeBron James play and just know him as the Laker guy, which is crazy to think about. But like those who didn't see Steph in his prime, they're going to look at SGA and they're going to look at Harden and go, that's what a superstar looks like. And this whole idea of, oh, he's just a foul baiter, that's not ethical basketball, that's going to be less and less relevant the more these younger kids are watching the game and the more they're setting the rules. We're just, if you're around my age, excuse me, or even older, again, you've seen Shaq in overwhelming strength. You've seen LeBron, overwhelming strength, athleticism, speed. You've seen Steph shoot the ball like nobody else ever. And that's what makes these guys look, quote unquote, less ethical or appealing from a play style perspective. That's really why we're calling them foul baiters. Oh, man, it feels good to be back. We are going to be back tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Appreciate anybody who's watching these on YouTube, watching the TikToks, listen to us, Apple, Spotify. Don't forget, new episode group chat is out. Go listen to that. New episode of A&M coming out tomorrow, but there's not going to be a new one for this week. Appreciate you guys so much. This is HardFoul Radio. I will see you.